right. Great dialogue. I enjoyed that conversation, and thanks to my home group for giving us the opportunity to come talk to a great group of realtors here. I'm going to talk about, I know that the agenda said something in reference to economic development. If you came here hoping to know or hear who the next Fortune 500 company is to relocate to Phoenix, that's not me. That's our economic development department. They would do a great presentation. I'm sure that if they haven't been here, maybe that might be an opportunity for the future. I'm going to talk about growth forecasting, infrastructure planning, and infrastructure funding. Okay, my name is Adam Miller, first of all. I oversee a division in the City of Phoenix Planning and Development Department called Growth Infrastructure and Financial Stability, which sounds like a big random collection of things that governments do that may or may not make sense to be together. But the thing that connects the work that I do and my team does is we oversee the city's growth forecasting. Okay, and so we work with our infrastructure departments, and I say infrastructure very broadly. Infrastructure meaning our horizontal infrastructure, water lines, sewer lines, and roads, as well as our vertical infrastructure like fire stations, parks, libraries, those types of things. We can also think of infrastructure in terms of shade, getting back to kind of the water conversation, the transit system. So we do our growth projections to inform infrastructure planning, and we do our growth projections to inform revenue and our financial system. And so my team works on the city's development impact fees program, which some of you in the room may have heard in the media recently. All of the cities in the valley that have development impact fees have gone through the process of updating their fees over the last year or two, including Phoenix. We also are responsible for setting the development services fees for the city of Phoenix. So this is our building permits and inspection fees to make sure that the department can remain, we're an independent enterprise department. So we don't receive any funding from the city's general fund, from any of the tax based revenue sources to the city. All of our funding comes from permit fees, essentially. I'm also going to go through this presentation. The first part of my presentation is going to be kind of illustrative. So the data that you see on there, I would say take with a grain of salt. It shouldn't be far off, but it's also not official and final data necessarily. So I want to go through kind of an illustrative discussion about how and why we do growth forecasting. Hopefully I can tie that to how that translates to infrastructure planning, and then bring it full circle to the financial side of things, and get into the impact fee discussion as well. You're going to see maps with specific projects on them that may or may not match up with what you think is happening on the ground. We can certainly get into those specific questions throughout the presentation, but again, just keep in mind that the first half of this discussion is going to be kind of illustrative. All right, with that, and I apologize in advance, this is going to feel very civics class-ish. All right, just to kind of get everybody oriented to, again, the city of Phoenix is specifically what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to break the city up into different areas. You're going to hear me referring to the northern new development areas. When I say northern new development areas, we're thinking about areas north of the Central Arizona Project Canal, essentially. So, again, for the realtors in the room, we're talking about Desert Ridge, we're talking about the Tremonto area, all of the area west of I-17, including up to Anthem, but west of I-17 where the semiconductor manufacturing project is underway. Everything below Desert Ridge where Mayo is going through their big expansion project. So northern new development area, the coloring is kind of weird on the map. I guess that's a white, so I can't call that shaded. And the pink shaded areas up there in the northeast adjacent to Scottsdale. Our southern new development areas are going to be our Estrella and Levine villages. Is anyone selling in the southwest area? A little bit, okay, some of you. Okay, good, we'll discuss that. I think most of this conversation is going to focus on the northern area, but we can also look a little bit into that southwest area. And then you see the big yellow center, balance of the city. The balance of the city, we can kind of break these areas up into sort of their level of maturity. So the balance of the city is kind of our established city area where the development activity is primarily going to be redevelopment projects and infill projects. And we do work to try to forecast where redevelopment projects are going to take place and what the infrastructure needs are to serve those. There are some really exciting projects going on in Phoenix that many of you are probably aware of. The redevelopment of Paradise Valley Mall is really starting to take shape and going to be a huge infusion of residents and reactivation of that mall space. Has some real infrastructure implications. Metro Center is another one that's going to be completely redeveloped with mixed use, multifamily and retail.
May I ask, what's
yeah.
happening with the little mall across the street from PV Mall?
Little Mall,
I mean,
east
on the
of
south side.
south of PV
South
Mall. I really don't know specifically.
Where Target is?
No.
No, I think you're thinking where
Hobby Lobby was.
Hobby
Yeah.
Lobby and
Chains
yeah.
and whatever.
I don't know what's going on there.
I mean, there's a
no.
whole lot, I'm not sure what it is, either
Okay.
everybody's kind of moved out, and it's,
I haven't driven by there recently, but are you saying that they've graded some of the structures
no,
there?
I mean, it's just that everybody's kind of moving out of the area,
Oh.
and it looks like something is going to be done.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if the developer has purchased additional land south of, what is that,
Just
Cactus?
curious, yeah.
But, yeah, I'm just not sure. They are saying that, the reactivation of the malls that have sort of gone down that process of shuttering with the shifts that we're seeing in the retail marketplace, the shift toward more online purchasing, and then also kind of the replacement of boutique and with more big box. But so that's kind of what we would refer to as redevelopment. So when you hear me say redevelopment and infill, I'm primarily going to be talking about the older part of the city. In the southwest area, the Estrella and Levine villages, that's kind of a middle age, if you will, part of our city where it's newer development, and certainly there is a lot of future new development that's going to take place in Levine and Estrella, and additional housing units that are going to be built there. Those are primarily already planned. Those are already kind of in the queue. The infrastructure is largely already in place, at least the big dollar infrastructure, again, your water and sewer and street infrastructure. The city will continue to be building parks and libraries and some of those public facilities that really are more contributing to your quality of life rather than just essential services to be able to occupy a home. So that's kind of on that later edge of new development, if you will. The northern area, however, is really just opening up. Yes, we have a lot of new development, a lot of development existing in the northern area. Again, Desert Ridge, Tremano, North Gateway area, Dove Valley area. But there's still an awful lot of land in North Phoenix that is not connected to our systems. And we'll see that in future maps. So building in North Phoenix and the infrastructure lift to be able to open up new land in North Phoenix is a very big challenge. And that's one of the things that I think really makes Phoenix unique nationally, if not beyond the United States, is that we have parts of our city with 100-year-old public infrastructure that's obviously aging, but is in need of repair, in need of replacement. That's a big bill that the city has to take care of. We can't just allow our infrastructure to deteriorate and fall apart. We have the responsibility to maintain that. So that takes a big chunk of the city budget, whether it's the water department through your water rates that Emily was talking about, or whether it's the parks department through sales taxes and other revenue sources. It's a big bill that the city is facing to maintain the infrastructure and the balance of the city. At the same time, we're one of the fastest growing major cities. We are the fastest growing large city in the U.S. And we're growing into areas that do not have infrastructure. So there's that kind of double hit, if you will, where we have a big bill to maintain what we have. We also have a big bill to be able to build and serve new development on the periphery of our city. And that's a real difficult financial challenge for the city, and that's why you will hear cities say, look, we really depend on developers to pay their own way, to pay their fair share, to make sure that the infrastructure at the service that we expect and its quality that we expect is in place, and they're bringing that with them, and we'll talk about how they're doing that. Any questions before we get into the substance here?
When you said the city has to maintain their own infrastructure, you're talking about just public spaces or private? I mean, obviously it's not going to be private, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about public facilities, so it's maintaining the road network, it's maintaining the water and sewer system, maintaining our parks, and a lot of times, again, with the water and sewer, it's replacing pipes. And we have pipes in the system that are 70, 80 years old, and so that replacement schedule is really starting to accelerate. The fastest growth decades in Phoenix, well, the fastest decade was the 70s, right? And so that area and you guys kind of know where that zone is around kind of the waistband of the balance of the city there. That infrastructure that was put in place is 50 years old now. And that's a big land area.
Yeah, I started noticing in a lot of areas in Phoenix where the roads are gone. I mean, there's like potholes. I never really have seen.
Yeah, and our street department puts almost no money into extending new roads for new development. All of their budget goes toward road maintenance. And it's difficult to keep up. Part of the problem is their funding is directly tied to they have several funding sources, but one of the major funding sources historically was gas taxes. Well, gas tax hasn't been increased, and the revenue generated from it has been declining every year for decades. So the money coming in for road maintenance is actually diminishing while the expense is increasing.
When these builders are developing these new subdivisions, because I happen to live in Tatum Highlands, so they're just tearing everything apart and building all this, which I don't really like.
It's a great example though with the CFD.
Yeah, so I know that the out on the west side of town, when I sell a house, I have to disclose this, I guess, loan. Is it a CFD? Is that what it's called? CD?
Community Facilities District. So that's one of the financing mechanisms that developers are starting to use. The legislature recently changed some of the rules to make it easier on developers to establish CFDs. But usually it's an additional property tax assessment on the residents that are benefiting from the infrastructure financed by the CFD. The way that works is the developer sets up the CFD. It's all kind of handled through the city. We don't love them, to be honest, because it is a big administrative task for the city.
Yeah.
But the city isn't really burdened by the debts. So that's one of the
Perks for
one
the
of the
city.
perks of it. Developer sets up a community facilities district, sells bonds on the bond market. They are muni bonds. Sells them so they're usually tax exempt. Sells bonds on the market. The revenue proceeds from those bonds they then use to build the roads, the water, whatever, to serve that subdivision. Then there's a property tax that's assessed only on the residents within that subdivision to repay the debt.
For a number of years, right?
Yeah.
15
Yeah,
years.
I think they're usually 20 or 25
And it's
years.
assumable by the new buyer, correct?
Oh yeah, it transfers. It's
built right
runs with
into
the
that
land.
property tax, right?
Is that what they did in Buckeye?
They do a lot of them in Buckeye.
That's-
Phoenix does not have a lot, but I expect we will have more and more going forward. Yeah, you're going to see the infrastructure is expensive, and the financial markets are difficult to navigate. And so muni bonds are one of the better options that developers have.
For us as agents, we need to know about that if it's coming to Phoenix, because
Yeah.
you know, if you work out in Buckeye, you're familiar with it. I've sold a few homes out there at Goodyear or wherever, and I
Right.
remember that, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, and even the sellers don't even understand it well enough to disclose it in disclosure forms. So it's kind of a really big
There's
deal.
there's a project on the latest one that Phoenix approved is called Verdant. It's a project just down the road from you off
what?
of Sonoran Desert Drive. Verdant.
Snore Desert.
I'll point it out in a later map, but it's in northeast Phoenix. It's a Taylor Morrison project that'll be.
How can I find those communities, like what I'm showing? Like, is there any?
The
system?
cities have to report, they have to maintain a dedicated website for any community facility districts that they have. The only one that would affect residential real estate in Phoenix will be Verdant. Tatum Ranch and Tatum Highlands has paid off their debts, so that you shouldn't be seeing that property tax any longer. So that one has been expired. That was the last one that was set up in the 90s. But I'll explain when we start looking into North Phoenix why I'm anticipating more CFDs in that location. It's more than just the infrastructure cost.
So how does that work? If they've paid off their debt, then how does that continue?
It doesn't. The property tax goes away entirely.
But I mean, so like who's paying for
Oh,
the?
so that it's just the maintenance at that point. All of the capital. So that's a good question. The first, if I'm understanding correctly, the first time capital is financed with the with the CFC. So it's just the capital construction. The ongoing maintenance then falls to the city.
Okay.
And, you know, it's primarily going to be water rates and sewer rates that are being collected off of those homes to maintain the water and sewer system. The roads have the same problem that I just described in prior
Is this
questions.
similar like a solar, you have to keep passing the bill until it's paid up?
The solar like lease program?
Like, you know, until it's paid up. That once, is it like the 20 years and that's.
I hate to equate anything to the solar lease
Just-
program. I mean, the
It's
only
kinda
thing
like
I
an
would think of
assessment
is
on a
timeshares and solar lease programs. They're
Okay.
hard for me
It's
to.
kind of like an assessment, like
There
you
should
in
be
a
a-
city like.
It's an
a
assessment,
website
what
that
it
we can
is.
check and see,
An
like,
assessment.
how far are they into it? Does it say when it's gonna be
Yeah,
not
you should be
paid, or-
able to. I don't-
Yeah, that's all disclosed
That's a
to you when
great
they give you the
question.
paperwork. The paperwork's all there. The homeowner knows it, but they just don't understand.
Right, but we could look it up on a website.
If they have the paperwork.
The
They have the
developer has to
paperwork.
disclose it up front. It would be those subsequent sales. Again, I think it has to be disclosed, and it would be in the property tax bills. The details might be harder to find at that point. I don't really know. Again, this is a little bit
You
of a
can
new
look through
thing.
past listings and see CFD disclosure on there, but sometimes the seller doesn't know.
Yeah, no,
Doesn't
most of them don't.
understand
I've
it.
had to contact the city and try to find out.
Yeah, the cities
Before
are
that.
required to maintain web pages with that information on it. So it should be available, but to your question directly of, you know, can we see where the status is on the payback? I don't know that the documents are in a format that would be easy to decipher. It should be. I
I
appreciate the
found that
suggestion.
paperwork somewhere when I had one way
Okay.
out there. I figured it out because the seller didn't understand it. And somewhere it's posted somewhere.
Okay.
So I was able to find
But
it.
it'll be an additional, it'll either be a specific special assessment, which is usually just a one-time charge, and so that may not necessarily have to carry over, almost like an HOA assessment.
Yeah.
Or
Like
it's
a
a it's a secondary property tax is where it shows up. Okay, so I'm gonna try to run through the framework and process of how we do growth forecasting pretty quickly. This is gonna get into, it has the potential to get really kind of gnarly detailed, but just to sort of give you an idea of the level of effort, the level of information and research that goes into this work. What you're looking at here is what we call our parcel sequencing work, and this is for North Phoenix. The areas that you see shaded in yellow are parcels where we have residential units in our growth forecast. The zoom in is just an example with the red shading. That's showing commercial development. Now, on the map, what I want to clarify is this isn't all of the commercial development in the north. There's red areas everywhere underneath the yellow there on the left. So it's just showing you how we're looking at both. And what we're doing is looking at projects that we have in our system. So projects that are going through a rezoning process is kind of, or have already been approved, right? There's large subdivisions being built, particularly in the north, well, all over. There's large subdivisions being built where, you know, maybe it's a 1,200 unit subdivision. 600 of those homes have been built and occupied. We still have to account for the remaining 600 in our growth forecast. And so we identify that. We look at rezoning cases. They identify how many units are allowed within a parcel. We look at the general plan to see what the land use expectation is. And then from that inventory of units, if you will, whether it's housing units or whether it's commercial space, we can then look at how we want to prioritize that from a sequencing through time perspective. And to figure out the sequencing, we're looking at things like proximity to infrastructure. Principally, would be the main thing that we're looking at, right? And so as we look at North Phoenix and the parcels that you see kind of highlighted here, in Desert Ridge, the infrastructure is pretty much there. It's kind of what we call plug and play, right? Come in, get your permit, get the thing built, let's go. If you're going to try to build out here, there's no infrastructure there. So this is going to be a long process, even to get your approvals. Number one, it's not going to be cost effective to even begin with. So we put you way out on the planning horizon in terms of our growth projections. Make kind of basic sense on how we're looking at this? Okay. We also look at infill and redevelopment in that balance of the city area, because what we're starting from is a forecast of population generated by the state and a forecast of employment generated by the University of Arizona. We have to take those numbers, people, and turn that into built space. Okay, so we're taking population, translating that into housing units, and we're taking employment numbers, translating that into commercial space, essentially. So we also have to look at the balance of the city and redevelopment, because if we put all of our new population in those new development areas, then we're going to be putting too many people, because we know there's a lot of redevelopment happening in Phoenix. This is kind of a new thing, really, for Phoenix. It didn't really get started in any significant manner until we climbed out of the Great Recession, right? Just recently, we've seen all the high-rises going in downtown Phoenix. So understanding how much of that population growth is going to be absorbed in the city center is really important in order for us to do a better job of estimating what the infrastructure needs are going to be out on the periphery, right? So that we're not over forecasting growth in the new development areas, whether it's north or southwest. To look at infill, we're kind of looking at the best value. We're kind of looking at what we're trying to identify through an economic analysis. Is this land being used to its highest and best value? And or is it vacant? I mean, if it's vacant, it's an obvious kind of low-hanging fruit. But if it's a land that's being used, if it's not being used to its highest and best value, then that's something we would flag and say, okay, there's a decent chance that this is going to be redeveloped. Now, none of this is regulatory. I want to be really clear about that. This is just for planning purposes. We're not changing land use designations. We're not saying, okay, that old manufacturing site, off of Van Buren, we think that that's going to be multifamily in the future. That assumption that we're making for our planning purposes has no bearing on the landowner whatsoever. So we always have to make that clear, because we're showing, hey, we think your business is going to turn into an apartment complex. And sometimes people get a little emotional over that. So I just want to highlight that. Okay. We also do a little higher resolution look in some of the areas that we've identified as areas of interest. And so these are our mall redevelopment projects. These are development along the light rail lines, where we really do a detailed analysis of what we think the needs are going to be. And so there's a twofold piece to this. It's yes, we need to forecast growth in the city center so that we're not overestimating growth in the periphery, but also development in the city center has its own share of challenges. As we replace J.C. Penney's with 5,000 multifamily homes, apartments, that changes the volume of water needed to serve that location, the volume of wastewater needing to be collected from that location. It changes the dynamic of the library that's at that location. I mean, it went from virtually no residents next door to 5,000, 7,000 residents that are going to be, utilizing that library. And so the city needs to be prepared and plan for that and make sure that the financial, resources are in place to be able to accommodate that new demand. Let's see, did I somehow skip right over the south? Oh, I guess I didn't get to, okay. Let me back up here just a second. Okay, so when we're looking at our growth forecasts, the horizons that we're looking at are fairly long term. This again, kind of illustration goes out to 2060. We're stopping at 2060 because that's where the population forecast stops that the state publishes. Water does their planning, their water supply planning for 100 years, right? And that's what they need to do to get that 100-year water supply designation that we discussed. But the way that this works from a practical standpoint for us is we're starting from 2020. That's our latest census number, right? We know what was built currently after census, and so we can get into the assessor's data and our own records to figure out, okay, what is the current land use base? So, how many houses do we currently have? How much, everything. What's the current inventory of structures in Phoenix? We can figure out what that is, and then we have to look forward. We look on a 10-year planning horizon for infrastructure planning and financing purposes, okay? And so these next series of maps, which you're going to see primarily, is this change of what we think development looks like over the next 10 years. And that's where we're working with the street department, the water department, and others to say, okay, what are your water system needs, road expansion needs, park needs, fire needs, in order to serve development over these next 10 years. So I just want to run through that. I'm going to skip over the North Phoenix growth trends. We can talk more about that and already have hit on some of it as we go through this discussion. But what you're looking at here is North Phoenix, and we're shading in the parcels that we believe are going to be developing to accommodate or absorb development over the next 10-year period from 2025 to 2034. And so in North Phoenix, you see a lot more infill, not the right phrase given what I just set up, but you're seeing a lot more development filling out Desert Ridge that hasn't built out yet. We're seeing the opening of Paradise Ridge, just east of Desert Ridge, adjacent to Scottsdale Road. And then we're seeing some movement north with residential properties into this large area called Azara. This block here in the middle of the Sonoran Desert Preserve is the Verdon project that I was talking about before. That's where the Community Facilities District has been set up. It's a Taylor Morrison project. We see more filling out of our North Gateway area. This area, again, is largely built in terms of the infrastructure necessary to serve this location. There are some parcels in and around Anthem that remain to be built without having to do massive infrastructure projects. We have the CSMC and the MAC Group project, primarily commercial, west of I-17 here. And so those are the areas that we anticipate development is going to be focused over the next 10 years in North Phoenix.
So that Halo Vista project is not there yet?
So Halo Vista is the MAC Group one. Yeah, good.
Gotcha.
Good term.
But it should be on top of the...
Let's see, where would it be? So the Halo Vista one is, let's see,
Should be
oriented
right
here.
on top of the TCMC, right?
Right, so TSMC is essentially here. Halo Vista is everything around it. I'm sorry, it's hard for you to see.
No, what I mean, because it's already supposed to be commercial.
Yeah, well, it's mixed use. There are some multifamily in that Halo Vista.
Is this info on your website? Where can we access?
Oh, it's probably, it's very bureaucratic, so it's probably hidden somewhere on the website. We can We can send it around. I am a little hesitant to, for the reasons that I said before, that this is just kind of illustrative, and I don't know that these maps are actually the final maps. Little pieces move here and there, but overall, this is a reasonable picture to take away. I didn't answer your question.
No, you didn't. So, I mean, it's important stuff for realtors
Yeah.
to know, and just even citizens.
Right.
As
Yeah.
to what is going on. And
So I think the easiest place to find this type of information would be on the development impact fee pages.
the city of
The
Phoenix.
City of Phoenix development impact fee pages.
Doesn't Maricopa Association of Governments have all these maps too?
So MAG would have similar maps. We work very closely with MAG, and
MAG.
we're always
What's it called?
updating.
Maricopa Association of Governments, they have maps for all types of development that's coming in Maricopa County.
They do.
Yeah.
They have a really great online mapping system where you can drill into a location and find out you can get all the census data, you can find the forecasting information. Yeah, MAG's a great resource if you can get to it. Now, I will say, we operate on different cycles. We work very closely together, but sometimes we're more current, and sometimes they're more current. There's always a disparity. It's just how planning works. But yeah, I think MAG is a great resource for that. If you want to get Phoenix specific, well, again, they would have Phoenix specific, but if you want to look at these maps specifically, the Phoenix impact fee pages, easiest way to get there is just in your browser, type Phoenix impact fees. The URL is just too, I don't know it. It's too gnarly to try to write down. Actually, it's at the end of this presentation. The URL will be. Yes, sir.
You may not be able to answer this question, but what's going on with the city of Phoenix and the D-backs?
Well, first of all, what's going on with the D-backs?
Well, that's besides the point. But what's going on?
I don't know.
Yeah.
The city's more associated with the Sun. The D-backs, I think, are a county contract. Yes, the city has a big responsibility in that, but you're right. That's outside of my purview. I really don't have any updates on that. I wish I did.
I meant no disrespect, I just.
No, I'm
Phoenix
personally
and-
curious.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. I'm just going to run ahead. This is just showing that we do these forecasts out to, as I showed you before, 2060, and how that area is building out.
Wow.
Yeah, we've got big cities. So I do want to throw out some numbers for you. So this is what I highlighted here in these rows. I know you can't read it. I'm going to tell you. Is comparing 2025 to 2034. So that 10-year horizon. And what we show for our forecast in our northeast area, so that's the area surrounding Desert Ridge, basically around Mayo, we're forecasting 20,000 units over 10 years. It's about 2,000 new units a year. A big chunk of those, an increasing share of those, will be multifamily. Okay, so of those 20,000 units, it looks like about 6,000 are multifamily units, and for that part of the city, that's an increasing share of the total. Now, in the northwest area,
Do we know if they'd be rentals or
I don't know.
other? No.
We don't distinguish that. I mean, the single-family homes. Well, we are seeing more single-family rentals. I wouldn't expect it so much up in Desert Ridge, but yeah, I don't have the ability to distinguish that. In the northwest area, we're showing about 8,000 over the next 10 years. Now, the northwest area has the space and ability to accommodate much more than that. The issue with the northwest is it's going to lag because there's so much work that needs to be done from an infrastructure standpoint, but even from a land ownership standpoint. I want to talk a little bit about the state land department and what their role is in this. Did you have
When you say that, you mean Surprise, Peoria?
No, sorry, Northwest Phoenix, just Northwest Phoenix. Yeah. So in that northern area, we're looking at almost 3,000 units a year, 2,800 units a year over the next 10 years in Phoenix. That's fast growth, and what we have experienced, and the reason that we're optimistic about that growth in North Phoenix, is that Phoenix actually has experienced a pretty substantial reduction in our capture rate relative to the rest of the county. You guys kind of know this intuitively. When the first big boom, early 2000s hit, and Chandler and Gilbert were the fastest growing cities in the world. And then, later, I think the West Valley started to kind of take on those roles. Phoenix was losing development. We weren't seeing the kind of growth that those cities on the periphery of the region were experiencing. We then, with the recession, moved into a period where Desert Ridge, which had gotten started during the early 2000 boom, got tied up in all kinds of legal battles and basically just shut down. So while Buckeye and Goodyear and Gilbert and Chandler were continuing to build, the places that we had zoning approved were stuck in the courts. In Levine and Estrella, the landowners were waiting on the South Mountain 202 freeway to get completed, right? And so it was just kind of a comedy of errors, if you will, or just a coincidence, but we ran into this scenario where there really wasn't a lot of development activity happening on the edges of Phoenix city limits for quite some long period of time. As we crept out of the recession, we saw that big shift toward the infill work, right? Or the high-rise apartments downtown. That is starting to slow. It's not going away. There's still a lot of cranes downtown Phoenix. But that is starting to slow, and we're expecting to see a big shift back to single-family homes primarily in our new development areas, the north that I'm showing you, and then also those southwest areas building out probably over the next 10 years or so. Okay, I just want to run down to the southwest. I know we have a few agents that work down there. In the southwest area, in the Levine, so south of the river, we're projecting about 8,000 units over the next 10 years. Principally going to be that Tierra Montana development right along the South Mountain 202 in Levine. And then in Estrella, we're projecting about 6,000 additional units. Starting to see more higher density stuff down there, no question about that. More accessible, affordable units in the southwest.
It's still one of the most affordable areas.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to just apologize in advance. These maps are horrible. I might be able to explain this better without the maps, but I'm going to try it with the maps. So just kind of bear with me. What you're looking at here, you can ignore the colors. The colors are kind of that area that we thought would be building out over the next 10 years. Now, these are also outdated. We don't think, for example, this parcel is going to build in the next 10 years. So, again, take it with a grain of salt. What I'm showing you is the land in North Phoenix that is developable. Undeveloped, but developable. Okay? Meaning, these lines through here, flood zone. Not going to develop there, okay? But all of the kind of green, yellow land around it, it's developable, okay? This area, Tramonto, Sonoran Foothills, North Gateway, already built. Ahwatukee, way up north, already built. Lots of, Anthem, yeah, thank you. Lots of development already in place in Desert Ridge, Del Valley, already built. What you see shaded is the land that is not developed currently, but is developable. Okay. Now what you see with the blue hash lines is the land that's controlled by the state land department. Okay. So I think this surprises people. A lot of people don't realize that the state land department basically has complete control over the land market in North Phoenix. Okay, I'll point out a couple of things. There are some lands that the state doesn't control. Here's one. Here's one. This was a state land piece. The Howard family owns that one. This is the Taylor Morrison project. Has been owned for decades from people whose names you would recognize. And then a couple there in North Gateway. But you can see that the state land department controls an overwhelming majority of land in North Phoenix. Now let me give you some scale. This area here, this is Cave Creek Road to Scottsdale Road, Pinnacle Peak to wherever it goes, Joe Max maybe. That's about 6,000 acres, totally undeveloped. An area we call Azara. Okay. There's over 20,000 acres of undeveloped land in North Phoenix, unserved, no infrastructure. All owned by the state land department, almost all owned by the state land department. Now, the land department has an important mission, right? Their mission is to provide funding for schools. So, to accomplish their mission, their objective is to get the best return on this land. They also have very rigid requirements that they have to follow to dispose of any land. They go through a public auction process. Some of you are probably familiar with that. That auction process can take years, and it creates a real dysfunction in the marketplace in North Phoenix. And I say that from kind of an economics academic standpoint. There are very few investors that can play the game with the state land department, right? And so that affects ultimately the pricing. As I mentioned, all of that land, most of that land does not have the infrastructure in place to serve it. That affects the land value, right? And so we're working very closely with the land department to kind of try to navigate these challenges and bring land out to get homes constructed.
So do you think those areas are going to be CFDs?
Thanks for bringing that back up. That's exactly right. I think that there will be a lot of CFDs coming in for these areas as they build out, because the land department, with those challenges that I was describing, is going to be selling these off in huge tracts, 3,000 acre tracts. The last tract they sold was Halo Vista. Now this isn't residential, mixed use, but it was Halo Vista up here. That was 2,500 acres. TSMC was 1,000 acres. This is 6,000 acres. I don't know that goes at once. I mean, that's a 30-year build-out horizon or whatever. But I think it probably goes in the 2,000-3,000 acre kind of realm. Some of you are familiar with Superstition Vistas out in Queen Creek and Mesa. That was, I think, a 6,000 acre sale or more, maybe even more. D.R. Horton picked up. So yeah, so we're seeing the land department move toward these very large sales that, because they have the buyer has to have that much land to carry the infrastructure bill. Make sense? All right. I'll cover this quickly. This is just kind of another fun map of North Phoenix. These are the floodplains in North Phoenix. There's a couple things I want to highlight with this, because we have a water scarcity challenge. We also have a too much water challenge. And so what you're looking at is floodplain, and what you should take away from this is that there are a lot of bridges that need to be constructed to build the road network in North Phoenix, and bridges are expensive. It's hard to expect a single developer to carry the cost of a bridge, and that's an area where the city is exploring more funding opportunities to be able to participate with the developer to get these bridges built, to provide, kind of a larger regional benefit, if you will. The other thing I want to highlight here, now most of this here is desert preserve, right? That's the Sonoran Desert Preserve. It's not ever developed. This interesting little floodplain here is called Rawhide Wash. Now, the city of Phoenix, the city of Scottsdale, the Flood Control District, and the State Land Department are all partnering on building a storm drainage channel, a flood control channel, to contain that wash. And it's a two-phase project. The project in Scottsdale is being built as we speak, which is, if you head out to Scottsdale Road north of Pinnacle Peak, you can see the work that's been done in North Scottsdale. The second phase of that will be to contain that floodplain to a channel within Phoenix, within Paradise Ridge. That area at the 101 and Scottsdale Road is probably the highest value land that the State Land Department controls. You might recall the Coyotes were interested in that piece of land recently. But once that channel gets constructed, that land value, skyrockets,
Right.
but more important than that, it becomes accessible to develop. And as you can all imagine, that's going to be transform that whole area. But I know when I have visitors in town and we happen to be driving that Loop 101, everyone looks out there and says, what's going on here? You know? Well, that's what's going on. It's a floodplain currently. Yes?
Is that what that huge wash is on the north side of the 101 that they built? That's a really wide canal type looking thing, right, by Scottsdale and the 101? Is that part
They
of that?
may be started on that. I'm
It's
not
done
exactly.
already.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what there is, so what this is going to end up looking like is there will be a channel built here. Now it's going to look natural, right? They're not going to just do a typical, you know, Corps of Engineers concrete thing. It'll look natural. It'll have trails and stuff. It'll be nice. But at the north edge of the 101, there will be a huge retention basin, basically, that has to be constructed to capture that storm water and then kind of meter it out under the 101.
So is that water going to be used for the development, or does it go to the city of Phoenix?
Well, that's stormwater. We don't have a very good way of recapturing that and reusing it currently. So it just washes down the drainages. It washes to the reach 11 of the. It runs into the north banks of the CAP canal, and then percolates or evaporates. All right. Any questions about that? That was a lot.
I have a question, like what's going on like in Ahwatukee with the golf course? Are they planning to do anything in there? It's all, like, it's been there,
Well, there's the golf course that shuttered.
right,
Then that's been tied up, I think, in court. I don't know if that's
yes, that's the one.
yeah. I don't know the status on that, to be honest. I'm not sure.
It's water.
Yeah.
I mean, the basic issue there is you have homeowners that bought houses backing golf courses that are now being confronted with apartment units being constructed in their backyard. In Valley too.
Green Valley was going under for a while. I don't know. I heard that we're going to develop that area. So
Yeah.
pretty upset. If your backyard backs
Yeah.
the golf course and all of a sudden it doesn't anymore.
Right. Yeah, I can understand. I mean, I don't think there's an easy solution to that. And unfortunately, when there aren't easy solutions, often the solution becomes a court-driven solution. So I think that's where that is, but I really don't know the status of that. Is impact fees a completely foreign concept, or is that something we're familiar with in the real estate world? It's really more of a new development construction thing. Okay, well, I'll go through it quickly. I don't want to get in. It's its own kind of subject matter. I'll just kind of go through it quickly. But impact fees are one of the tools that cities have to ensure that new development is paying a fair share. Impact fees are different from taxes in that taxes. This sounds weird. Taxes can be arbitrary. Right? You have to go through a process and get taxes approved by the electorate, right? But the basis of a tax can be completely arbitrary, whatever your constituents are willing to pay. An impact fee has really strict rules that have to be followed, that are established through case law, that are established in state statutes, where we go through a very rigorous process of figuring out, one, what infrastructure will development benefit from? So you have to have that nexus. You have to benefit from the infrastructure that you're paying impact fee for. And then the other test is you can't pay more than what your benefit is that you're getting back. So we have to look at all the different types of developments and say, okay, for this road, your benefit is X%, basically. For this water line, your benefit is Y%. And then we go through a process of figuring out what the fee schedule is. It's a very complicated thing. But these are fees that are charged when new building permits are collected, are issued. They are only, similar to the CFD funding, they're only for first-time capital. Okay, so they're only for that first time that the road or the water line or the park gets constructed. can't use impact fees to pay for staff, we can't use impact fees to cover operating costs or maintenance costs, any of that. It's just that first time capital cost to get the infrastructure in place. Phoenix collects 11 impact fees. That's for public safety, so police and fire, for parks, library, for storm drainage, so that flood control project we were talking about in Paradise Ridge, that's going to be, the cost of that is going to be recouped through impact fees charged within Paradise Ridge.
Passed on to residents or?
Well, passed on to the developer.
Developer.
Right. Now, in the residential marketplace, I think you kind of, made the connection. Well, if the developer's paying this, we just know that that gets translated into the home price. Water and wastewater, both the pipes, which is our transmission and collection systems, as well as the treatment plants, the water and wastewater treatment plants, and then roads. And so we have 11 different categories of fees that we're charging. These are the kind of the areas that we're charging the fees. The color spectrum represents kind of the relative cost of the fee, and as you would expect, that North Phoenix area, where we have very limited infrastructure in place, is where our fees are the highest. Those fees are in the $30,000 per single family home level, up to I think about $37,000 per single family home. The green area, we're only charging for water and wastewater treatment, and this is a new fee essentially, or we should say maybe an expansion of our water and wastewater treatment fee, where council said, look, we have really big water challenges, and we really need all new development to be contributing toward our water system resiliency going forward. So those green areas that you see in the balance of the city historically did not pay development impact fees, and that was a policy decision made by Phoenix Council in the 90s when the impact fee program was established. With this recent update that takes effect in June 23rd, we will now be collecting impact fees for development in that balance of the city location, specifically for water treatment and wastewater treatment.
Yeah, sorry,
Yes.
we really only have like a minute.
Oh, okay. Let's wrap it up then. I'm going to just very quickly just show you some cost increases. I just have a quick series just to show you what we're confronting. When it comes to our distribution system, we've seen a more than doubling of the cost of our water system. This is one example, 42-inch transmission pipe increased 150% from the last time we did our fee update in 2020. The study was done in 2019. Same look, but here you're looking at roadways and bridges, doubling of roadways, more than doubling of bridge costs, and then finally fire stations, again, more than doubling. And so this is where we're seeing that cost of new infrastructure really present a challenge. This is looking at the fees regionally. Phoenix represented by the blue bars, and I just want to say that Phoenix covers the top and the bottom of this spectrum regionally. And that goes back to what I was saying before, where the new development areas where we don't have infrastructure, that's where you're going to see the high fees. And that's true whether you're in Phoenix, Peoria, Gilbert, Buckeye, you're going to be at the top of the scale. But in our more established areas where the infrastructure is largely already in place, that's where we see the lower fees. And so at the bottom here, that's the balance of the city, that green shaded area that I showed you previously.
And that's just reflected in the property taxes.
It's an impact fee, so it's reflected when the builder pulls a building permit. Yeah. And then just finally, the impact fee, the infrastructure that we're looking to build over the next 10 years is about $5 billion in infrastructure. The impact fee program covers about a third of that. And I'll leave it there. I don't know if there's any questions. Time for questions, Kelly. I'll end it there.
So it's so hard for me to answer nicely. If the students are happy, then we're all happy.
Thank you so much. I think it's very informative.
I know there's a lot of content to cover.